Welcome to Paranormal Almanac with your host, Kurt Sand.
That's me. Womp time. Back from a long break. Gone, but hopefully not forgotten. That's right, we are back. Hey, howdy, hi, and welcome from downtown Studio City. That's right. On this episode, we're going to talk about UFOs. Don't worry, I'll get to the Studio City stuff in a second. But first, as always, we've got shout-outs. That's right, shout-outs going out to the patrons. Thank you so much, patrons, for sticking around during the insanity of moving. Am I done moving? No. But still, it is very close to being done, and I cannot wait to be completely done with the, well, let's just call it a shithole of Van Nuys. I'm so happy to be moved out of there. I'm living in Studio City. I'm recording from Studio City right now. So shout outs to Stephanie Todd, Sophie Alice, The Babster, your local cryptid, Flory, Naughty Innuendo, my favorite kind, Jen, Danny Darkcipher from Australia, Sarah Jane Oxley, Angie, Lisa Cervantes, Curious Hedgehog, Diana, Mr. J, George Berg, Casey the Pitbull and all her pups, Deb B, GC, Tracy, Newt MacGyver, MacGyver on it, B Melty, Avril, Loch Ness, not a monster, Stacy, Leviathan, Sticky and Chani the Pommy, Hey Howdy Hi, JT, Doogie Whore, Mike G, Tracy B, Richard, Alec, Karen, Duran, Lori, Rebecca, Ann, Stephen Scher, Hey Howdy Hi, Jane N, Jennifer, Heather G, Zuzus, What's It, Paula, Nico Scher and the Mouse, Hey Howdy Hi, Mark and Tina, Tortuga, Alabama White Thang, Andy, Tracy, Virginia Mailman, Tony the Magician, Vicky, Crow, Isabel, Jen, Amber, Tracy, Sandy, Paige, Kaush, Scott, Andrea, Vanessa, If I Was the Devil, Elizabeth, Sherry, Hey Howdy Hi, Art Muffin, Tim, East, Clintwood, Kenneth, Alexandra, Zozo the Demon, Hayden, Cindy, Ashley, Robin, Lauren, Russell, Isabel, Audra, Dorian, Cindy, Jerry, Jeff, Lawrence, the Lawrence Strawn, Hey Howdy Hi, Veronica, Autumn, Carolyn, Nanashi, Todd, Jamie, and Elijah Hendrickson. I saw Todd and Jamie at the Pee Wee Show just the other day. It was phenomenal. Dan, Laura Pitts, and the one, the only, the best, the Gamer Fan. With some special shout-outs. Special shout-out to Sid Croft. I mean, he made my childhood. I know it's been a few weeks since he passed, but I wanted to make sure I gave him a special shout-out. Special shout-out to Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman. Going to see the Pee Wee Live show was absolutely incredible. Talking to people who knew him, worked with him, were related to him. It was absolutely incredible. Happy birthday to Russ. I know it's been a couple of weeks. A very special shout-out to Nick Adams, who I just found out is a listener. Fun fact, I used to babysit Nick Adams when I was a kid. It's crazy. It's weird. I have no idea how or why he started listening, but my mom's like, you know, listen to your podcast, Nick Adams. You remember Nick Adams? I'm like, yeah, I remember him. I babysat him. That kid was way into He-Man. But yeah, listener Nick Adams. Hey, howdy, hi. And of course, a special shout out to Joe Teague. 6 years. That's insane to me. And my boy Stitch. All righty. Welcome from downtown Studio City. Like I said, I'll say like 90% moved in. I'm living in the new place. I have been for a couple of weeks now. Every night after work, I go and do a truckload of my little pickup truck. A truckload of stuff. The goal is to try and get as much stuff out of there myself before having to call, like movers for the big stuff, like the TV, the couch, the fridge. This place has a little fridge, so I'm not like fridgeless for the past couple of weeks. But, I just spent a lot of money on a fridge 10 months ago, so I want to make sure I get my fridge over here. But anyhow, so every night I go over, fill up one pickup truckload with boxes, bring them over here. unbox that stuff, put those empty boxes back in the truck ad nauseum on repeat for the past couple of weeks, but I'm pretty damn close. And you might be thinking, holy crap, Kurt, how much crap do you have? Well, first of all, a lot. But second of all, I'm actually, I'm reusing the same boxes. So the same 10 boxes, every night for 2 weeks is a lot of stuff. But I mean, they're smaller boxes. I want to make sure I don't blow my back out. That's important to me. So again, it's very close to being done. I cannot wait to be completely out of there. I have till the end of this month, end of May, to be completely out of that horrible, horrific apartment in Van Nuys. I'm so happy to be done with that place. It is so much nicer in Studio City. People are friendly. Rum and I will go for a walk. People will say hi and pet Rum. There's rabbits. There's squirrels again. There's no sex workers. Not that I have anything against sex workers, just not when they're throwing used condoms everywhere like they did in Van Nuys. But yeah, there's tons of squirrels and rabbits and ducks. And, Rum's got a tiny, tiny little backyard, but it is phenomenal. It's a quiet little place. Only one neighbor, shared wall. So it's very quiet. It's what I wanted, what I needed. So fingers crossed, I think I'm good for a while. But let's get into this episode. Thank you so much for all of the people reaching out going like, hey, man, you alive? What happened? Where's the new episode? I want to hear a new episode. I know. I wanted to do a new episode. It has been insanity in the news since I've been, not away, but, away. Speaking of news, let's get right on into it. Alrighty, the first story in paranormal news. Researchers believe Noah's Ark has been found in Turkey after new underground scans. Now, again, if you listen to this show, you will know that I've said it for years. It's been out there for years that there was an ark found in a mountain in Turkey, or Turkey as we're now supposed to be calling it. That's what it's called. But researchers working in Turkey say fresh scan data uncovered what appears to be tunnels inside a long-debated landform, bolstering their claim the site might be a man-made object that they believe is Noah's Ark. I do believe that this is real, decayed, buried remains of Noah's Ark, the famous ship, and we're doing our best to convince the skeptics and show the world. This is according to Noah's Ark scan researcher Andrew Jones. It's in Mount Ararat, and it's crazy. There were I was trying to find these videos that I had seen years ago on YouTube of people that explored it, like really badly, shot videos, people exploring it and then being like chased away out of there. But it does look like old wood. It does look like a ship that's upside down, a big boat that's upside down in Mount Ararat, and no one could explain why. But I can't find these videos anymore. It bums me out. I'm going to try again. But this guy says our new research has shown that there are tunnels about 4 meters down and about 2 meters high going down to the center of the boat and on the inside edge of the hull shape. We really believe that this layout showing tunnels and also possible support beams and walls would suggest that it's a man-made object and not just a natural formation or phenomena. Many geologists disagree, saying the remote site just a mile from the Iranian border is nothing more than a hill. But Jones said the Bible states the ark landed in the area, that the dimensions of the site also matched the biblical description, and that the soil inside the formation showed remarkable results in testing. It's insane. Like, if that is the case, and like I said, it's been debated for a long time or investigated or thought about for a very long time, that Noah's Ark might be real. Now, obviously, I don't personally believe that, God flooded the earth. I mean, there was a flood back then. Don't get me wrong. That is scientifically established. But I don't believe that God was like, hey, man, hey, Noah, build a boat real quick. Make it big because 2 of each animal, and that's it. Because that doesn't explain a lot of shit that, is real, scientifically real about animals and the earth and migration patterns and all that fun stuff. But could there just be a giant boat that he put a bunch of animals in? I can't say no. Anyhow, it's freaking weird. Alrighty, up next in paranormal news. This is a little bit on the political side. Stay with me. Calm down. A real 2023 Twitter post with name Cole Allen circulates after White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting. That's right. It's odd, and Snopes said it is true. I checked it out. It does seem to be true. There was a screenshot that went around right after Cole Allen attempted to shoot or whatever the heck happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Make of that what you think. But I will say, if you really want to get into that, go down that rabbit hole. What is with the large amount of AI videos of the incident, of him running towards the agents and through the metal detector and agents and dogs talking to him? It's really sketchy. I'll just put it that way. But I'm talking about a 2023 Twitter post that reads Cole Allen. That's all it is. Except for the image that's on the header of the Twitter, like you can put on your top of your, or, like you can post on your Twitter back in the day. It gets even crazier because, well, here, just listen to this guy.
Probably one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. The shooter from last night's name was Cole Allen, but there's a Twitter account from 2023. And this account made one post, and it was almost 2.5 years ago, and it was just Cole Allen. Now here's where it gets wilder. The header of this account is an image from a website called Time Machine, which is a project to preserve digital use of our heritage. But it gets even wilder. If you superimpose the image of Butler over it, there's an outline of Trump.
Well, now, when he says Butler, he means the photo of Trump raising his arms with the fake blood coming down the not shot ear and the flag behind him. There is a weird digitized, like, matrixy looking photo at the header of this 2023 Twitter account that only did one post that just said Cole Allen. And if you superimpose that photo of Trump raising his arm over it, it matches. It's weird. And I'm not much for
one of the most bizarre things. Digital use of our heritage. To preserve digital use of our heritage.
All right,
but it gets even wilder. If you superimpose the image of Butler over it, there's an outline of Trump.
Oh, I guess that was the end of it. All right, but yeah, it is really weird. It is a very tinfoil rabbit hole, foil hat rabbit hole to go down, and it seems to be true. One post, the only thing it did, 2023, the header does have that weird distorted image on it, and yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Anyhow, up next in paranormal news, here's a big one. I want to do an episode about this. I kept pushing it off, saying, nah, these deaths are unrelated. Nah, these deaths are unrelated. And bodies kept piling up until I finally had to say, okay, there is something going on with the missing and dead scientists or people in the UFO community. There's something going on there. Again, you can go down way too many rabbit holes, but there seems to be something going on. And, well, that something going on has made its way to the White House already because people are going, the hell's going on with all these scientists? This was only from, 2 weeks ago? Hold on, let me see when this post was done. April 22nd. So a few weeks ago, it was at 11. Now we're at 14 or 15. 11 scientists are dead or missing. It was only a matter of time before conspiracy theories hit the White House. Yeah, there is something going on. I'm not going to read too much into this because, like I said, I think I want to do an episode about it or look really into it. But people asked the president, like, what's going on with these scientists? And Trump was like, I hope it's random, pretty serious stuff. Hopefully, I don't know, coincidence, whatever you want to call it. But some of them were very important people, and we're going to look at it over the next short period. Kurt here, no, they haven't. They haven't done anything with it. But it is very odd. It is very weird. Something seems to be happening to people in the UFO community or working on rockets or scientists. Something's very odd going on. So don't be surprised if I talk about it on a future episode. Up next in paranormal news, UFO docs have been released. No, that's all they get. I'll talk more about it because that's what this entire episode is about later after paranormal news, because I got a lot to get to. Up next in paranormal news, and there's a reason that applause is so short. The Pentagon unveils troves of declassified UFO videos. How to see them all, from a football-shaped body to a misshapen and uneven body ball of light. Yep, they sure did. Have I seen them all? Yep, I sure have. Look, I've got thoughts about these troves of declassified UFO stuff, but I'll get to that when I start the episode. Because up next in paranormal news, nine bedrooms, seven untimely deaths. Can cursed Venice Palace finally attract a buyer? That's right. It's back up for sale. If you want the most cursed place in Venice, Italy, it's back up for sale. It's primarily positioned on the banks of the Grand Canal in Venice, just steps away from the Peggy Guggenheim collection. The storied Ca Dario, sure, why not, has shimmered on the water since the late 15th century. Named after its first owner, Giovanni Dario, it was in 1908, it was painted by Claude Monet during his trip to Venice, and it's haunted as crap. It's cursed. Estate agents have struggled to overcome its reputation as Venice's cursed palace, owing to a string of owners and guests who met untimely and, in most cases, violent deaths. That's right. Oh, hold on. You need one of these. Now freshly renovated, the sale of Ca Dario has been given another push. The challenge to get someone to move in there. As the story goes, the Palazzo is associated with at least 7 deaths. The most gruesome in 1970, when its owner, Count Filippo Giordano del Lance, was murdered within his walls by his boyfriend, a sailor who fled to London and was himself later murdered. Yeah, it's supposedly cursed. He is said to have told friends that he has slept elsewhere in order to escape the ghosts while he manages the place, but local people have blamed the curse for his descent into drugs, subsequent financial crisis, and death in London. Okay, cool. Yeah, it keeps going on and on and on about the curses. I mean, it's cool looking. It's phenomenally cool. But, so if you need, how much is it again? How much is it? Oh, come on. Tell me now. 20 million pounds, or whatever the hell is lira? I don't know what the hell it is. 20 million something. It's a lot. It's more than I have, I'm guessing. So if you've got, here we go. 17.4 million pounds, 20 million lira? I don't know what the hell that symbol is. If you want a 9-bedroom, 8-bathroom with a grand reception room, it is gorgeous. I highly recommend looking this place up. And yeah, it's right there on the Venice Canal. Here's your place. And it's cursed. So you got that going for you, too. You know, speaking of haunted stuff, a haunted villa in North Carolina called Via Fortuna from circa 1887 is up for sale for only $103,000. So if you need something that's haunted, but you don't want to move to Venice, Italy, and you don't have the 17.4 million pounds, how about a haunted Italianate villa in North Carolina? The owner said she will hear leather shoes moving across the tile floor in the early hours of the morning, or she'll smell a freshly lit cigar in the bathroom, which was an old porch. It was built in 1887. It's located on a half acre in Reidsville, North Carolina. All this 3-bedroom, 1 bath, all this can be yours for $103,000. It looks more than 1,400 square feet. I don't think that's right. Yeah, it's cool. It's gorgeous. Right there in Reidsville, North Carolina. If you want a haunted house in North Carolina, well, there you go. I've got one for you. Let's see. I thought I had another haunted house for sale. Well, let's just keep on going on. If you want something fun, how about an apocalypse early warning system? There is this guy named Kyle McDonald, who said, in the event of an imminent nuclear apocalypse, We suspect that many people who have access to private jets will immediately take to the skies and escape city centers. This site I built tracks this indicator in real time. The current emergency level is reported on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being an indicator of a likely imminent apocalypse. So if you guys want to know what the billionaires and the ultra-rich are going to do if there is a nuclear apocalypse, or an apocalypse of any kind, I would assume, you can follow this. You can go to kylemcdonald.net. Yes, kylemcdonald.net. It's called the Apocalypse Early Warning System. For only $5 a year, you can get texts when all of a sudden all these rich motherfuckers' planes start taking to the skies to escape to like Hawaii and New Zealand or wherever the hell their bunkers are. But right now, don't worry. We're at emergency level 1 of 5. I invested the $5. I will let you guys know if all of a sudden it starts going off, because I don't have a bunker, so obviously I'm not going to survive, and I don't have a private jet. But, yeah, he can, it also tracks business jets, military jets, untracked jets. It's got some weird stuff like, aircraft by models, including Bombardiers, Textron, Cessnas, Gulfstream. I mean, it's got a lot of details. I'll give them that. And I'm sure it won't be long until Elon Musk or another billionaire is like, take that down. But for right now, there's your early warning system. When they all start flying off in the same direction, I'll panic. Alrighty, up next in paranormal news, was Bigfoot just spotted in Ohio? Reported sightings stoke a long-running hunt for answers. Mike Miller and Benjamin Radford have both spent years talking about Bigfoot. When you hear something or you see something, you know that sticks with you and it becomes part of you, and you just can't shake it, says Miller, who's been on the hunt for the Yeti for those are two different things. Been on the hunt for Yeti for nearly 2 decades with the Ohio Night Stalkers. It's a fascinating question whether or not these creatures exist. Well, they think it's real, and they think there's been an uptick in reports of Bigfoot sightings, encounters, whatever you want to call them, right around the Portage County, Ohio, just east of Akron. And it keeps going on. They're finding footprints. They're finding people are seeing them. Something's going on in Ohio, and it seems to point to Bigfoot. Now, I will say that there was word while I've been absent, there was word that with the new Patterson Gimlin is a hoax documentary, that there were some viral marketing of Bigfoot encounters. So that very well could be part of it. I don't know. Alrighty, up next in paranormal news, Army vet's alleged close encounter with 9-foot-tall Bigfoot changes his life. That's right. Retired U.S. Army Sergeant Todd Neese, I don't know, says he was blindsided when he came face-to-face with 3 massive Bigfoot-like creatures during a military mission, and now believes the elusive beasts may be watching us. He said those 25 seconds changed the entire course of my life. He was once skeptical of Bigfoot stories, claims that in 1993, he and 3 other soldiers from Army's 1249th Combat Engineer Battalion were conducting training exercises with high explosives in Oregon's Coast Range wilderness when they spotted what they believe were 3 Bigfoot. The figures appeared ape-like, stood roughly 7 to 9 feet tall, and had human-like faces with bodies covered in hair. He described their proportions as unlike those of a normal human. Their silhouettes were completely disproportionate in terms of the arm length and even the length of the legs, as it pertains to a human torso. He also claimed the creatures appeared to be observing the soldiers from a distance. Now, he doesn't have any physical evidence or photographs. He became heavily involved in the Bigfoot research, and in 2015 founded the American Primate Conservancy, which is a nonprofit organization focused on the study and protection of Bigfoot. You remember, what's the key word when it comes to Bigfoot? Don't fucking shoot Bigfoot. Yeah, I think it's very cool. I like that this guy was like, holy crap, I found a Bigfoot. Maybe I need to do something about it. Aha, I knew there was another one up for sale. How about this one? There is a haunted Denver mansion. It's up for sale for $3.2 million. It's called the Historic Lumber Baron Inn in Denver's Highland neighborhood. It just hit the market for $3.2 million, but It's haunted. The 3-story Victorian mansion, currently operating as a bed and breakfast and event space, has earned a reputation as one of the city's most haunted landmarks. Its eerie charm has drawn ghost hunters and even landed on Netflix's paranormal series. I don't know which one, it doesn't say. But anyhow, the property has been restored to its original floor plan. Lumber magnate John Mout built the property in 1890 for his wife and 5 children. His 10-year-old son was fatally stabbed inside the home by a grocer. Wow, that's messed up. Then came the Panic of 1893, which tanked the markets and his fortune. In the 1970s, during the building stint as an apartment complex, 2 young women were murdered in a double homicide that remains unsolved. Since then, it's basically all the paranormal stuff. Footsteps, voices, smells, sounds, shadows, everything you can think of. What they're saying, you definitely know they're here, but it's not scary, says outgoing owner Joel Bryant. He said, I love it when they interact with me and say hi to us about the girl spirits. And the future is up to the buyer. They can convert it back to a private house, but it is a transferable cabaret liquor license, a coveted and hard-to-find perk. Ooh. All right. It's got its own liquor license. I want to see what this place looks like. Hold on. Oh, yeah. It's pretty. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's got a cool, weird starlight or a satellite thingy on the roof of it. Like it's mid-century modern starbursty kind of thing. It's a historic Denver B&B and event venue. Yeah, it's cool. It's got the history of it right there. It's got the blog of it right there. It's called thelumberbaron.com if you want to know more about it. And if you buy it, invite me. I'd like to stay there and do a paranormal investigation with you there. Wow, it looks really pretty. Alrighty, up next, I think last in paranormal news. Oh, maybe not. There's a couple more. Patient breaks out of psychiatric hospital, stabs woman to, quote, remove the curse. That's right. Prosecutors say the Holland woman escaped Barbanal hospital, bought a knife, waited outside the victim's home, and admitted planning the attack in advance. A 50-year-old woman was indicted Sunday of charges of aggravated assault after she fled a psychiatric hospital, bought a knife, stabbed a woman she believed had placed a curse on her. So yeah, here's your thing. If you're going to place a curse on somebody and get them locked up, make sure they stay locked up, okay? That's my advice to you. And finally, a fun one that's not about stabbings. For paranormal news, Ohio politics has entered its cryptid era. Ohio has a lot of official things. We have a state bird, a state flower, a state rock song, and now a state cryptid. That's right. House Bill 821 would officially designate the Loveland Frog as Ohio's state cryptid. Hell yeah. If you don't know what the Loveland Frog is, I've done an episode about it before. It's a really cool one, and I'm happy that Ohio is going to adopt it as its state cryptid. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. We are back. I guess I should tell you, go over to dashery.com, look for Paranormal Almanac. I can't think of what it's called. Let me see if I can find it. I should be doing this properly. Dashery. Paranormal-almanac.dashery.com for all your paranormal almanac needs. Okay, anyhow, with all the UFO talk, I figured I want to dive in to these, I'm air quoting big time, new files and see if any news stories actually come from the government UFO files that they released that I mentioned in Paranormal News. It's all over at the dumbest website name ever, war.gov/UFO. Hopefully you guys didn't skip the paranormal news section. There was a lot to that one, but I talked about it briefly, but I didn't want to get too deep into it because I wanted to talk about it on this episode. I wanted to do an episode devoted to these files. So I went through, I was going to say everything, but not really. I'm still going through everything on my very, very limited free time right before I go to bed, but most of everything posted on, again, the dumbest named website, war.gov/UFO, so you don't have to. They cleared for release on May 8th, I think it was, 161 files. On the first page of the site, there were 10 files. And of those 10 files, 9 were already stamped, released by the Freedom of Information Act. Most of those done in the 70s. So it's not a ton of new stuff. But they say, oh, but no. This includes mostly unredacted stuff. And everything is included for the first time. Everything's not included for the first time. Nope. I'd seen these pages being passed around online for years and going to UFO conventions and Reddit and UFO websites way before Reddit. Like, this stuff has been out there. But how much of it is intriguing or new to you? That's what I had to keep thinking. Like, sure, I've seen it, but that doesn't mean I spent way too much, a huge portion of my life reading every UFO fanzine and going to UFO conventions and buying, all these copied pages until they're almost illegible, having to sift through to figure out, is this actually real or is this nonsense for idiots like me buying at UFO conventions? But I wanted to get through a lot of these and kind of see what stuck out to me that I thought might be interesting to you. Like, here's a real brief one. August 12th, 1947, Pan Am captain Alpheus Powell, cool name, was cruising towards LaGuardia when he spotted a bright orange fuselage-sized cylinder. Woo! It's going to be a fun one. Fuselage-sized cylinder pacing his plane. His navigator, W. White, saw a deep gold elliptical craft going 175 miles per hour. He said it was about 15 feet long, 2 to 5 feet deep. Yeah, it's really cool. You can read about it in these files. But there was nothing new there. I've known about, I don't think I remembered his first name was Alpheus, but I've known about Captain Powell's UFO sightings. It's been out there. I think I've even talked about it on a previous episode. But what about a deep dive? If I go through every page, again, what stories are jumping out at me as something cool to share? So I went through hundreds of pages of nothing because a lot of them are scanned pages of the backside of paper with like a stamp saying, backside of page, whatever the page was right before it. So there's a lot of nothing in these files, but there is some cool stuff. In a minute, you're going to hear a lot from 1947, which is what I really wanted to focus on because obviously 1947, Roswell, well, get this. Again, I haven't gone through everything, but what I have gone through, which is a large portion of 1947 or the earlier files, if you will, don't mention or don't have anything related to Roswell. Come on, really? The glaring absence of Roswell files make it even more 100% official that there was a Roswell cover-up. If they were smarter, they would have kept the stuff that was already talked about Roswell. They would have kept it in there. They can edit out some of the stuff. They don't have to put everything. It's very obvious from the way that these files are and the sections that they have at the beginning that show like what, I don't know, how do I word this? Like if you go to war.gov/UFOs and you scroll down past all the nonsense about like, thank you, the president's going to be the most clear, blah, blah, blah. You get down to the files themselves. It says 161 files. Then it mentions the agency, all FBI. Then it mentions the release date, all 5/8/2026. Then it says incident date, NA, incident location, NA, type PDF. But here's the odd thing. They didn't put them in order. The files aren't in order on their website. They start in the 1960s in Section 10 before going to Section 2 in the 1940s, but no Section 1. Where's Section 1? Why are these obviously... Someone is picking and choosing these things very obviously. goes Section 10, Section 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Section 130, Section 150, or Serial 130, and Serial 153. And that's on the first of 17 pages. So, again, it's very glaringly obvious to me that they are sending us or sharing with us what they want us to see. And obviously, the majority is what they wanted us to see were stuff that was already released by the Freedom of Information Act. It was odd. So fingers crossed. Let me see if I set them up correctly so I can read them to you. Oh, come on, fingers crossed. Yes. Okay, I did it. I was really worried that after going through a few of the sections, I was not going to get the correct pages right. And then I was going to be like, hold on, let me scroll. I think it's over here. I don't remember what page it was on. Nope. Whew. So far, so good. First up is an interrogation, their words, not mine, with John E. Woodruff, who is the chief mechanic, Pan American Airways personnel from July 16th, 1947. Now, again, I wanted to get to the earliest stuff and do primarily talk about the earliest stuff on here because it's the beginning, if you will. So let me zoom it up just a little bit more, make it up 125%, so I can read it even. It says interrogation of John E. Woodruff, chief mechanic, Pan American Airways, at something field in Newfoundland, taken at 14:15, 16th of July, 1947, by Captain William H. Smith, the intelligence officer. Did you see one of these so-called flying discs or other object on the 10th of July? He said, yes, I did. What time? Approximately 1700. Tell me the circumstances. We were coming back from a fishing trip and coming up over the hill between here and Stevensville. You see the cloud formation ahead. I saw the object break out where the clouds opened and left its trail behind it. The guy was like, had you been drinking? No. You were riding in a car when you saw it? Yes, in the front seat of the Pan American car. What was the weather like? It was very clear. The clouds were very scattered. What was the approximate altitude of the clouds? I'd say from 8,000 feet to 10,000 feet. Did you see the disc itself? Yes. What it appeared to be was a translucent disc, like a wheel traveling at terrific rate of speed, and opened the clouds as it went through the air. How was it traveling? It was horizontal. How big was it? From the height of it, I'd say about the size of a 54 a constellation. I don't know what that is. It must be like the size of a plane. How far apart did it break the cloud? It spread the clouds about half a mile. What kind of break did it make? It was straight path through the clouds. Did it leave a trail? Yes, it left a trail, dark bluish, similar to a high-powered light, the trail from approximately 15 to 20 miles long. Have you ever seen a meteor? Yes. Do you think it was a meteor? No, I don't think it was. It was straight as an arrow. What was the course of the object? Well, looking at the map, I'd say north-northeast. Have you been working around airplanes long enough to know the size of an aircraft and the height of a distance? Yes. How long have you been working with aircraft? 7 years. Were you in the Army during the time of the war? No. Did you take any pictures? No, I did not. But one of the boys took some, which I thought was very interesting, but it's just dropped. Do you think the pictures will show up? Yes, it was an ideal day for pictures. And then they go on to ask him, like, who are you? What did you do? How long you been around planes? They talked to John H. Merman Jr., who was the supervisor and mechanic, about the same incident. July 10th, did you see one of these so-called flying discs? Yes, we were coming up over the mountains between here and Stevensville. The car was going up the hill. We could see the sky through the windshield. Mr. Woodruff said, look at that out in the sky. I looked up and saw a bluish-black vapor trail. Did you see the object? No, I just saw the trail as it was left behind. So it was another guy in the same car. They interrogate, their word, interrogation of John N. Nerman Jr. Was the trail fan-shaped? What did it look like? Did it make any noise? Both men said no noise at all. Which, again, 1947, something that close, that big, they would hear it. They work at Pan American. They know every airline, every plane, everything out there, completely silent. Then it goes into the interrogation of Robert E. something, I can't really read it, who was the station mechanic. Same incident, same guy. He was in the car. Were you in the car with those two men? Yes, I was. Were you guys drinking? No. I had one something of beer that was about half hour before that. Can of beer. One can of beer that was about a half hour before that. What'd you see about the object? Yes. Did you see it through the clouds? Yes. Did it leave a trail behind? Yes. Was it making any noise? No. What was the altitude? I don't know, sir. They were pretty high, though. What time was this? I don't know exactly, sir, but it is between 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We were coming back from fishing. Now, this guy's obviously a little bit more nervous than the other two. How long have you been working around planes, etc.? About 6 years. Were you in the Army? No. How many pictures did you take? 2. What type of camera did you have? An Argus F2. Was the film blank, white, or Kodachrome? It was Kodachrome. Where are the film now? Well, I took 3 or 4 rolls, and I'm not sure which one the pictures are on. I understand that they're being developed. Yes, I think it's out of the camera, sir. I have not sent them out yet. Will you give me the 4 rolls of film so we can have them officially processed? Yes, sir. Are you willing to give Army the copy of the pictures of the trail? Yes. And then, boom, nothing. There you go. John P. Legg. There you go. But anyhow, it goes on to talk. I mean, they were talking to the men ad nauseum, if you will, really interrogating. Now I see kind of why they were saying interrogation, but really, really talking to them, and then nothing about the film. I'm scrolling as I'm saying this, but there's nothing about the film. No, it moves on to the next case. So we did give them the film, and then boom, just nothing. Where is that? They have photos in here. They got microfilm. They got photos. They've got microfiche, whatever they call it. They've got scans and carbon copies of photos, yet nothing about this guy's photos. BS. I call BS on that. That's just the end of it. I'm trying to figure out if there is an end. No, that's it. It literally says restricted confidential, page 321. The men who did it, Robert W. Leedy and S.L. Hinson Jr., who's the captain of the Air Corps adjutant and the station mechanic. I mean, it's just 17th day of July, 1947, and then just, boom, that's the end of it. Approximately 10 o'clock in the evening, 10th of July, I was standing by my store door. I happened to look up and saw what appeared to be a flying saucer. It definitely was not a shooting star. I'd seen several shooting stars before, but never like this, nor was it an aeroplane. It was too lit up and traveling at too great a speed. It wasn't an airplane on fire because it would have fallen in the water. It was a nice, clear night, no clouds. It was just getting dark. I would say it was traveling at the rate of a shooting star, but much closer. I'd say roughly 6,000 feet. It was not visible for about 15 seconds. Came from the northwest, heading eastward. The circle looked to be about the size of a barrelhead, and the trail behind looked to be about 15 feet long. The trailhead behind the disc made the whole object look like a cone. Another thing that makes me feel sure it wasn't a shooting star usually leaves a temporary streak. This object I saw left no streak, only one that appeared to travel behind the circle, which looked like an afterglow. Circle was bright red. Nearest I could describe it would be the color of flame. The afterglow cone shape was a fainter shade. What I saw last Thursday night resembled a shooting star. That's by John P. Leggy or Ledge or whatever, who was also a witness. But then nothing, and then it just moves on. They talked to an Albert Sams in the area on the 17th of July, same area. Independent, he saw that same stuff. Talked to a Mrs. John Sams, his wife, obviously. I hate the fact that they never give the women's names. This is like seriously like misogynistic 1940s government files. They give details about every guy that they talked to, what he looked like, how tall he was he in the Army, was he balding, what color was his hair, and then it also just has a Mrs. John Sams. Nothing about her. Yeah, but I mean, look, I looked up that UFO incident, and yeah, there was a UFO incident. It's, again, nothing new. It's been reported about forever with the same people. It's weird to me that, again, the photos don't exist, apparently, which is bullshit. And it's weird to me that they can just kind of move on and be like, okay, that's the end of that one, moving on. Because the next one is Portland, Oregon, August 20th, 1947. A Lieutenant Colonel Donald L. Springer saw in the Portland paper a short time ago in regards to an article of, quote, flying discs. That's when the word finally got out and the newspapers were having a field day with the flying discs. He said, I saw the same flying objects about the same time. Having a telescope with me at the time, I can assure you they are real and nothing like them I'd ever saw before. They did not pass very high over where I was standing at the time. Probably, I'm assuming he meant I can't even say it, probably, 1,000 feet. They were around about 30 feet in diameter, tapering sharply to a point in the head, ending in an oval shape with a bright top surface. I did not hear any noise as you would from a plane. But there was an object in the tail, and it looked like a big hand of a clock shifting from side to side like a big magnet. That's weird. Their speed, as far as I know, seemed to be greater than anything I ever saw. Last view I got of the objects, they were standing on the edge banking in a cloud. Yours respectfully, F.M. Johnson from Portland, Oregon. Yeah, this one goes on to say about the same thing, but a lot of people mention this in letters that they independently send to the government, to the FBI, saying, hey, I saw this in the newspaper, and then right around that same time, I saw something very similar to that. I wanted to let you know about it. It seemed to be like the American way. You got to see something, say something. A lot of people came forward to the FBI, or even to the police, there's a couple of those, to say, hey, I'm seeing something. It's odd. I don't want to be associated with this. And that was the big one, was it's still out there that if you see something, you're obviously crazy. So a lot of people didn't want it on record, but wanted to just be like, hey, here it is, not on record, on record. This one from July 1947, same Portland, Oregon, same incident. My name's Richard Rankin. I'm 47 years old. I've flown since I was 19 years old. I first solo in an aircraft in 1919. That's insane. I've flown all over the western parts of the United States as many times and mapped all of the western part of the United States during the years before the late war for the U.S. Forest Service. I'm familiar with almost every part of the western United States. During a great part of my life, I've done stunt flying for air shows and various other types of aeronautical exhibitions. My brother was Tex Rankin, who's quite well known in both civilian and military flying circles for many years before his death, and during the war ran thousands of flying cadets through primary training schools. He talks about he has 7,000 hours in the air as a pilot, both military and civilian. Then, here we go. I saw on the 14th of June, 1947, from the yard of my home at 1808 South M Street in Bakersfield, California, local. At approximately 12 noon on the 14th of June, I was lying in the front yard of my home. There was a lad mowing the lawn at the time. I looked up into the sky and saw 10 articles flying from the south to the north and what I would judge to be about 8,500 feet. The objects were flying at approximately what I would judge to be 350 miles per hour. As I've stated before, I've done quite a lot of map work for the U.S. Forest Services. I distinctly remember at the time I saw the articles mentioned. I told the lad the objects were all probably some sort of Army or Navy test planes from the nearby test centers at the deserts of Southern California. Having quite a knowledge of aircraft in general, I attempted to explain to the lad mowing the lawn that the objects were probably on some sort of training mission for either the Army or the Navy. They were disc-shaped. I called them the so-called flying flapjacks that the Navy is supposedly testing. After the objects disappeared, I proceeded into the house and had my noon meal. So he's, very matter-of-fact about, I saw a bunch of UFOs. There was a lad mowing the lawn. He mentions that about 10 more times than what I said. And that lad also saw them. They have a clipping from the same thing, from the same sighting, from the newspaper. It doesn't say what newspaper. Oh, from the Oregonian newspaper that has some back and forths with our, government, the U.S. government, saying like, uh-oh, this guy saw a bunch of them and he seems to think they're from Army or Navy, that they are not. There's another article saying, this one's from the Twin Falls, Idaho, Twin Falls Times. Heads up, folks, the discs are flying again, telling about this same sightings. And that, let's see, what page am I supposed to be on? There we go. We're still good. Lieutenant Colonel Chrysler, I think, says, look, there's nothing like it that we have, not from the Army, not for the Navy. What did this guy see? Memorandums back and forth. Some more people that were witness to those sightings of the, quote, unidentifiable objects. Talking to the commanding general of the Army Air Forces in Washington, saying, are these ours? And them saying no. It's so apparent from just this one file. Let me pause right here to say it's so apparent. If you're a skeptic, a hardcore UFOs aren't real skeptic, what the hell are these people seeing? And in these classified files from high-ranking colonels and generals saying, I don't know, they aren't ours. They're not ours at all. We don't know what they are. They don't think they're foreign. There's mentions of they could possibly be foreign, then it immediately shut it down. Enclosed herewith for your information is investigation relating to unidentifiable objects, which initiated at Headquarters Flying Division Air Training Command, Randolph Field in Texas. This office assisted. No further action is contemplated by the headquarters concerning investigations of this incident. They are not ours. So there you go. There's a guy, S.H. Morrow, who's saying, not ours, dude. And these are classified documents between high-level security officials. It's insane. Let me skip ahead a little bit. I can't go through all 126 pages. We'd be here for days. Here we go. Here is a list of reports, again, all around the exact same time. Report number 1, manner of disappearance, climb very fast, not of sight, no definitive shape, looked at the object through binoculars. Next one, obscured by a cloud bank. From this observer wrote, it is obvious he's a well-educated person, seeks no publicity. Next one, lost in the brilliancy of the moon. Observers 2 rated 2 Air Force intelligence, phoned field ops to ascertain no scheduled experimental aircraft were in the vicinity. Sky chart attached to observer is administrative assistance in the something it's cut off, including 2 other scientists in the know. So again, these people would know, were there any experimental aircrafts? Look, the fact that this guy, that one guy that I was talking about a minute ago is from Bakersfield, he is right. At that time in Bakersfield, we were testing all kinds of crap. But he also said he's seen just about everything we tested, and these were discs. It's the next one. Don't know whether they were put on a tremendous burst of speed or disintegrating. However, they did disappear into the sunset. Observers were a pilot, co-pilot of scheduled UALC DC-3. Stewardess also saw the objects. Verified statements. It's cut off, something like that. Disappeared at an angle of about 30 degrees. Rolled from side to side 3 times in its path across the sky. Sun reflected from the top side, but never from underside, even when turning. And then it's 14, 15, and 16 were all unexplained objects, pilots witnessing these objects. One thing that in the 40s that is very obvious there were a ton of pilots, and that makes sense. There were a ton of pilots in the war, and when they came back, they had already flown dozens of missions, so they knew what they were seeing. And they were very quick to say, hey, look, I'm a pilot. I've flown since blah, blah, blah. That one guy since, 1919. These things are not ours. These things are discs. They count how many flying discs. They count the formation. There's always talk of formation. They talk about the contrails. Very, intelligent pilot-assisted or pilot intuitive or educated sightings in the 1940s, which is another reason I really wanted to focus on the 1947 files, because again, it was the very beginning of these. People didn't know, if you weren't reading the newspaper, you didn't know about the flying discs that were being reported everywhere. And people are saying, like, I don't know what the hell these things are, but I've flown just about everything, and I've been in this area for so long, I can tell you they aren't ours. So it's really interesting to see that. Let me skip ahead a little bit. Let's go to page 83. Here's one from Greenfield, Massachusetts, July 10th, 1947. Commanding Officer West Overfield from Chicopee, Massachusetts. Dear sir, after having read several accounts of eyewitnesses who claimed they had seen the so-called flying discs, it brought to mind a strange experience I had some 2 weeks ago. The reason I write to you is that the radio and newspaper reports state that the Air Force have been alerted to investigate these mysterious objects. Assuming that you are interested, I'm making the following report in belief that it might be possibly of help to you. Again, this is more of this, like, if you see something, say something around this time. And again, it makes sense. We had just finished World War II. People were very scared there was going to be a World War III. So if they saw anything odd, boy, did they let people know. About 11:30 a.m. Sunday, June 22nd, I was working outdoors on a stepladder looking up, and suddenly there appeared across my line of vision a speeding, brilliant, small, round-shaped, silver-white object at an altitude I would judge to be about 1,000 feet or more. It was moving very fast in a straight, northwesternly direction. I would say as fast or possibly faster than a speeding plane. It was so unusual and strange a sight that it arrested my attention for about 8 to 10 seconds until it was obscured by a cloud bank. Naturally, my curiosity was considerably aroused, and I tried to think of what this object might have been. I doubt very much that it could have been a weather balloon because it was not at all like any weather balloons I had seen before. The object I saw, although small, reflected the sun very strongly as though it was made of polished aluminum or silver. I can assure you it was very real. It appeared to have an irregular round shape, and while it could have been disc-shaped, it did not particularly impress me as such. I've attempted to give you this information as accurately, as clearly as I know. Yours truly, Edward de la Rose. Now, I looked him up. I can't find any UFO reports from an Edward L. D. Rose, which is one thing that I wanted to do with any of the ones I talked about on this episode. I wanted to see if I could find, what happened to these guys. Where are these people? In fact, a couple of them I even looked up for obituaries, and I couldn't find them, sadly. But I wanted to find out, are these people still alive? There is a small chance these people could still be alive. I mean, I know we're losing the greatest generation like crazy day by day, but there's a chance that somebody mentioned in these files is still alive and could give more insight. And man, I hope that's the case. I really do. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Incident, July 16th, 1947. On July 12th, 1947, a call was made to the newspaper office of the Idaho Daily Statesman in Boise, Idaho. The aviation editor of the paper, Mr. David N. Johnson, was interviewed in regards to how well he knew Mr. Kenneth Arnold of Boise, Idaho. Pause right there. Hopefully, you guys know where I'm going with Kenneth Arnold of Boise, Idaho, because he is big in the 1947 UFO flying discs, flying saucers story. The purpose of this interview was an attempt to verify statements made by Mr. Kenneth Arnold on June 26th of 1947 when he had saw 9 flying saucers in the air above the Cascade Mountain Range of Washington. The story that coined the term flying saucers, the story that flying discs that brought UFOs to the majority of the world. And they talk about him. They talk about him in depth. He's approximately 33 to 35 years of age, very reserved type of person. He's logged more than 2,800 hours of flying time in various types of airplanes, up to and including multiple engine aircraft. During part of the war years, he was the first pilot of the B-29 type aircraft, being assigned to the 20th USAAF and is stationed on Tinian Island in the Pacific. So they talk about his experience as a pilot. They talk about his war experience as a pilot. And they talk about that he seems reputable. They were hoping they could easily debunk him for, well, not Project Blue Book. I can't think of what it's called. I can't think off the top of my head what it was called prior to Project Blue Book. But they're trying to debunk stuff right off the bat in 1947 for the guy who coined the term or really brought the term flying disc or flying saucer to the world. But I was very happy to find that in the files, because if they didn't mention him, I was going to call BS on that, because he can't talk about 1947 UFOs without bringing up Johnson. Let's see. There's a guy that, let's see, what is this one? It's all about the Boise, Idaho thing on July of 1947 by David N. Johnson. They go through his entire testimony. He goes into detail. I took an AT-6 of the 190th Fighter Squadron, Idaho National Guard, of which I'm a member, flew to northern Idaho. He talks about his day. On the 9th day of July, 1947, I continued the search again using the National Guard AT-6, trying to find these flying saucers again. He was also trying to find a downed plane. So he was going back and forth, looking for not only these flying discs. They said, conduct an aerial search of the northwestern states in an effort to see and photograph a flying disc. This is for the U.S. government. Conduct this patrol for so long a time as you believe reasonable or until you see a flying disc. This was done to him by James L. Brown, the general manager of the Statesman newspapers. He goes about his search, blah, blah, blah. The clouds are near, blah, blah, blah. 75 miles, blah, blah, blah. 11,000 feet. Turn the aircraft in easterly heading. And that's when he sees it again. I immediately centered my gaze on the object. At that time, due to its erratic movement, I thought I was seeing a weather balloon. I called the CAA's communication station at Boise, asked if weather station had recently released a balloon. Their reply from communicator Albertson was that the Bureau had not. I don't remember his exact words. I am under the impression he said not for several hours or given me the exact time that it was released, blah, blah, blah. I returned the aircraft broadside to the object, pulled back the plexiglass covering to avoid any distortion, took my camera from the map case, and exposed about 10 seconds duration of 8mm motion picture film. During the time, the camera was at eye level. Because of that, he couldn't see through the scope of the camera. As soon as he pulled the camera away, he centered in on the object again. I observed it to roll so that its edge was present to me. At this time, it was flashing. It flashed once in the sunlight. It then appeared as a thin black line. It then performed a maneuver which looked like it had begun a slow roll or a barrel roll, which instead of being completed was broken off at about the 180-degree point. So he's watching this thing make maneuvers. He's continuing to watch it. He says, I forgot to look at my clock to determine the exact time, but roughly about 17 hours. Just a few seconds elapsed between the first time I saw the object and the time I called the CAA station. He's going into massive detail about this new sighting. He said that they scattered some P-51s in the area to find the object at his request and conduct a search. They said that I was subsequently informed that the personnel on both the United Airlines side of the Gowan Field and on the National Guard site observed a black object maneuvering in front of the same cloud formation, which by now had grown so that the clouds reached a probable height of 19,000 to 20,000 feet. So other people were seeing this. Multiple people were seeing this. He goes on to say, look, I've got 2,800 hours of flying time from primary trainers to B-29s. At the time of the experience, I had flown 14.5 hours on an assignment to find a disc and, if possible, photograph it. In all frankness, I was tired. But that doesn't mean anything. Other people saw it. He can be as tired as he wants to be, but other people saw it. Here's where it gets funny. The exposure was F-16, stopped at infinity at 16 frames per second. He handed over the film. I've worried over this matter a great deal since seeing it. I took myself aside and said, come on now, Johnson, don't be stupid. But I cannot bring myself to the point of thinking I did not see anything. The impression of the moment was too vivid, too realistic, and I know in the air when I saw that partial slow roll or barrel roll that I was not a victim of illusion. I hope this matter will be of help to investigating the flying disc phenomena, which has been reported, and then nothing about the film again. That's what, again, the glaring lack of this evidence is very obvious that they're holding stuff back still to this day. He drew a little chart of that barrel roll thing. They talk about back and forth about the incident, that they being the government talk back and forth about the incident, and then nothing. And then it moves on to another incident. They give life data on Kenneth Arnold. It's bizarre, man. It is really weird. Like I said, the glaring absence of some of this stuff that they talk about in detail, and then all of a sudden they just drop it and they move on to the next case. This guy, Kenneth Arnold, let's see, where's the beginning of this one? Kenneth Arnold, I was born March 29th, 1915 in Subika, Minnesota. Sure, why not? He talks about his father's name, his mother's name, where he went to school, where he started flying, when he started flying, where he worked in 1930s, district manager. Basically, one thing that they're very clear about is like being very forward with like, I'm not crazy. Look, here's my past, here's my experience, here's my work, here's my job. You can ask my other coworkers. I'm not crazy. These people were really afraid of ridicule in 1947 about coming forward, yet they did it because, again, almost like out of patriotism, they've got to come forward. He talks about his flight experience. He talks about, then it finally gets to hear it. The following story of what I observed over the Cascade Mountains, as impossible as it may seem, is positively true. I never asked nor wanted any notoriety for just accidentally being in the right spot at the right time to observe what I did. I reported something that I know any pilot would have reported. I don't think that in any way my observation was due to any sensitivity of eyesight or judgment than what is considered normal for any pilot. On June 24th, Tuesday, 1947, I finished my work for Central Air Service at something, Washington. At about 2 o'clock, I took off from Chehalis, Washington Airport with the intention of going to Yakima, Washington. My trip was delayed for an hour to search for a large marine transport that supposedly went down near or around the southwest side of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. The date and to date has never been found. I flew directly towards Mount Rainier after searching an altitude of about 9,500 feet, which is the approximate elevation of the height plateau from which Mount Rainier rises. I had made one sweep of this high plateau to the westward, searching for all the various ridges for this marine ship, and flew to the west down and near the right ridge side of the canyon near Ashford, Washington. Unable to see anything that looked like a lost ship, I made a 360-degree turn to the right and above the little city of Mineral, starting again towards Mount Rainier. I climbed back up to the height of 9,200 feet. The air was so smooth that day, it was like a real pleasure to fly, and as most pilots do when the air is smooth and they're flying at a higher altitude, I trimmed out my airplane in the direction of Yakima, Washington, and just basically enjoy. He's basically saying, look, I just was enjoying the flying. It was smooth. It was clear. I could head it in the right direction, and I kind of just started looking around, enjoying being up in a plane. He said there was a DC-4 to the left and to the rear of me. The sky and air was clear as crystal. I hadn't flown for more than 2 or 3 minutes on my course when a bright flash reflected on my airplane. It startled me as I thought I was too close to some other aircraft. I looked every place in the sky, and I couldn't find where the reflection had come from until I looked to the left and to the north of Mount Rainier, where I observed a chain of 9 peculiar-looking aircraft flying from north to south at approximately 9,500 square feet elevation and going seemingly in a definitive direction to blah, blah, blah. They were approaching Mount Rainier very rapidly. I thought they were jet planes. Then I discovered where the reflection was coming from. As 2 or 3 of them came within a few seconds, would dip to change their course slightly. These objects were, let me skip ahead. These objects were not jet planes. I was determined to clock their speeds as I had 2 definitive points I could clock them by. The air was so clear that I could very easily see these objects and determine their approximate shape and size at almost 50 miles that day. He goes on to say, they're discs. They're flying discs, 9 of them, in a V formation like geese fly. He seemed to be about 20 to 25 miles away from them at this point. The more I observed these objects, the more upset I became, as I'm accustomed and familiar with most all objects flying, whether I'm close to the ground or higher altitudes. I observed the chain of these objects passing under high snow-covered ridges between Mount Rainier and Mount Adams. Let me skip ahead. Boy, he's going into pages of detail about how close he was, how clear it was, what he was seeing. They were straight and level. They were just black, thin lines, and they flipped was the only time I could see a judgment of their size. These objects were holding an almost constant elevation. They did not seem to be going up or becoming down, basically saying, like, hey, these aren't rockets. They aren't artillery shells. They didn't have wings. These things were on a steady, steady course. These saucer-like discs were at a great height, and there's a possibility that all the people who observed peculiar objects could have seen the same thing I did, but it would have been very difficult from the ground, but I was right on the same, basically, elevation as them. They were discs. He repeats it over and over and over again. I would have given almost anything that day to have a movie camera with a telephoto lens. From now on, I will never be without one, but to continue further with my story. When I landed at Yakima, Washington Airport, I described what I'd seen to my very good friend, Al Baxter, who listened patiently and was very courteous, but in a joking way, didn't believe me. He then talked to another guy, a former Army Air Force pilot. He talked to another guy. He's basically trying to get someone to believe him. Even though I openly invited an investigation by the Army and the FBI as authenticity to my story or a mental or physical examination as to my capabilities, I received no interest from these two important protective forces of our country. I'll go so far as to assume that any report I gave to the United and Associated Press and over the radio on 2 different occasions, which apparently set the nation buzzing, if our military intelligence was not aware of what I observed, they would be the very first people that I could expect as visitors. And then he draws it. I mean, he draws what he sees from the top, from the side, basically saying, like, come at me, bro. I'm telling you what I saw. It's bizarre to me. Like, again, these people are very clear, very intelligent people, and yet nothing was done. Absolutely nothing was done. They would go into files and be like, oh, here are the people that know him. Here's what these people say about him. But nothing was really done about this stuff. Then came the worst descriptions ever. I mean, let me see if I can find it. Is it this one? Yes. This guy was obviously given a thesaurus for Christmas. Substance of the interview is as follows. In the accompanying of the following, telemetering supervisor, Mr. C.C. Rockwood. And he goes through all these people's names. When I first sighted, an object was moving to the right and forward of the automobile at an unstated elevation, was approximately moving horizontally in a northerly direction, such as across the highway from right to left. The object was observed by all parties and peoples in the automobile. And it just goes into detail about, like, how many ways can I say aerial object? How many ways can I say unidentified object? He never wanted to say it the same way twice throughout this entire report. Let's see. This one is about, I'm skipping ahead. I'm an hour and 14 minutes. I'm starting to skip ahead. Where is this one? Here we go. Come on, copy and paste time. I want to make sure I get this right. Page 108. Captain E.J. Smith and Ralph Stevens, United Airlines pilots. Here is another big story that I've known about for years, but I wanted to bring it to the attention. Captain E.J. Smith was interviewed at 1500, 9th of July, 1947, concerning the flying discs, and stated substantially as follows. We left Boise, Idaho at 2004 Pacific Standard Time at approximately 2015, the co-pilot Ralph Stevens called my attention to the first object seen. We were in the vicinity of, hold on, I got to zoom in. This one's blurry as hell. Of Emmett, Idaho. Our altitude was approximately 6,500 square feet. We were climbing to our cruising speed of 8,000 square feet there to Pendleton, Oregon. That's when they saw 4 objects, then an additional 4 objects, or 1 object, then an additional 4 objects. They were all discs. They were all on the same plane, all at the same altitude, about 8,500 square feet, or 8,500 feet. Shortly after this group disappeared, probably 1 or 2 minutes later, a second group appeared at about 310 degrees to the right of the plane. Their altitude was the same as the first group. The objects appeared to be the same disc-shaped objects. They were flat on the base, the top slightly rough in contour. The dimensions appeared to be the same as a DC-3, approximately 5 miles from us. In other words, it could have been 90 miles away if it was possible for an object as large as that to be seen flying. So basically what they're saying is they saw a formation of 5, and then those things took off at great speed. And then right after that, a few minutes after that, they saw another formation of 5 or 4. So they saw 9 flying objects. My personal opinion regarding these objects are their speed was varied, was not constant. When first sighted, they were going slow and stayed within sight for quite some time, and then they took off, disappeared practically immediately. I think they either put on a tremendous burst of speed and disappeared from sight, or else they dissipated. Also appeared that only one object, the large one, was controlled, and it turned control the other object. I think they were ground controlled. And then they go on to, hey, it wasn't just me. Ralph Stevens, the co-pilot, he was interviewed. Same story. They talk about a couple other people. Same story. And here's the deal. Well, actually, let me keep reading. 8 minutes into the flight, as the airliner was flying roughly into the sunset, First Officer Ralph Stevens saw what he thought were 1 or more approaching objects in the twilight sky. He responded by blinking the landing lights on the DC-3, alerting his co-pilot, Captain E.J. Smith. The 2 men saw 4 or 5 objects, flat and circular. He would tell the Associated Press at a later time they were bigger than the aircraft, but he would say to the United Press, because these objects' positions were relative to the airliner, we can't say anything about their shape other than they were thin and smooth on the bottom. They're saucer shape, basically. They watched these things flying for a while, and when they landed, they reported them. And I think, well, let me pause right there. So, Emil E.J. Smith made a name for himself after this incident for investigating UFOs. Again, I personally think it's because he had gone forward with his own sightings and was ridiculed, or they stymied his career, basically, so he had to investigate these things. He told anybody that would listen, this is what we saw. We watched them for a while. Here are the people that were with me. They all went, yeah, they came forward to the government and said, yep, that is what happened. They talk about how they were interviewed at the Boise Municipal Airport. Captain Smith was passing through Boise on a scheduled flight and had a 20-minute stopover. He reiterated the statements originally made by him to the press that he had seen in the late evenings of July 4th. He was very open, very convinced that he saw flying discs, and that he knew that he would open himself for ridicule attached to a report of this type. Here's why I'm bringing this up. His sighting was on July 9th, 1947. Over Boise, Idaho. On July 8th, 1947, is the one glaring omission in these files. The most famous UFO crash possibly ever, the Roswell crash, happened the day before his sightings. A bunch of UFOs flying in the direction of Roswell the day after the Roswell crash. Obviously, the Army said, oh, no, the Roswell report was wrong. It was that of a not yet made weather balloon with dummies. Yeah, right? But we cut to June 21st, 1947. So before the Roswell crash, when Harold Dahl and Fred Chrisman, I can't be June 21st. Maybe I got that date wrong. But anyhow, still 1947, Harold Dahl, Fred Chrisman witnessed the explosion of a donut-shaped flying disc while boating near Maury Island in Puget Sound. I've talked about this on a previous episode as well. And when I looked that one up in my notes for previous episodes, I was like, wait a second. A name popped up that's connected to this. E.J. Smith. Emil J. Smith was the person that was sent to investigate the Puget Sound crash, if you will. They sent, Pulp magazine publisher Ray Palmer commissioned Ken Arnold and Emil E.J. Smith, and I checked, and they're the same person, to investigate this claim. They're one and the same. So Kenneth Arnold and E.J. Smith arranged for the supposed UFO wreckage. Puget Sound, some people say 100% a UFO, other people say 100% false hoax. They arranged for the wreckage to be turned over to the U.S. Army specialist. But, shocker or not a shocker, the B-25 carrying the, quote, possible UFO material crashed shortly after leaving Tacoma on August 1st, 1947. That's right. It's considered to be the second after Roswell possible cover-up of flying disc evidence. The official cause was an engine fire that sparked something that broke the wing off, that crashed the plane. The materials from the crash were never recovered officially. I'm calling BS on that. The officers were driven to McCord Airfield, departed for Hamilton Field, California around 2:15 that morning. At approximately 2:35, the B-25, piloted by Captain Davison, crashed near Kelso, Washington. An investigation by the government claimed the exhaust stack from the left engine caught on fire, igniting the wing, causing it to separate from the plane as it broke off, destroyed the tail of the aircraft. Of the 4 men on board, the officers were the only men who were unable to parachute to safety, the pilots, basically. However, newspapers received anonymous tips soon after, and I mean, not like days after, I mean seconds after the plane crashed, that B-25 crashed. Newspapers received anonymous tips completely before an investigation was even done, which claimed that the plane had been shot down with a 20-millimeter cannon to prevent the UFO fragments from arriving at Hamilton Field. What's odd about that is it named the officers 12 hours before their identities were available to the public. Am I making this as big a deal as it should be? I mean, I'm hoping you guys are grasping why I'm so, slowing down for this part. The B-25 that was flying supposed UFO wreckage crashed 12 hours before the information was released to the public. Newspapers in the area had the names of the officers that had died in the plane crash. It's weird. There are actually previously released government files about the crash. Shoot down, cover up, whatever you want to call it. Not included in these government files. Again, a glaring omission. These things have been released previously in Freedom of Information Acts. You can find them. You can go to a website called solvingmauryisland.com, and you're going to find reports that aren't in the, quote, official government reports that were just released on war.gov. Here's one. Washington, 8/6/1947, flying discs, Portland teletype referencing phone call from Mr. Ladd at Bureau, 1 p.m., 5th last night. Going into the investigation and deaths. Upon learning of the deaths of AAA investigators mentioned in reference teletype, he planned upon departure to obtain results. I mean, these documents are right there on this website that you can see. And there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4, 5, 6. I mean, it just keeps going. 7, 8. I'm going to stop after a minute. 9, 10. There's at least 10 files that are not in these new war.gov files. and including newspaper articles. I mean, it talks in depth about the Air Force Day marred as B-25 crashes here, 2 killed. I mean, it's bizarre to me that they can have such glaring omissions in these new files released by our government that are supposed to be the be-all, end-all of UFO files. If you forget about Roswell for a second and that glaring omission, and then you look into this one and its glaring omission, it is very, very, very obvious to me that they are holding back a large portion of files. But anyhow, let me see. One thing I did like about these new files, I will give them credit, the war.gov/UFO files. One thing I did like about them is they did include a lot of Hoover files, of Hoover responding to people, of Hoover talking about like, oh yeah, this is bad. This is, this is a big thing. Hoover was very, very accessible to the American public. I mean, they would email J. Edgar Hoover, and J. Edgar Hoover would respond like, hey, hey, thanks for your photo that you sent me of this supposed UFO, or your inquiry on UFOs or flying discs, and people asking for rewards. Like, hey, I found a UFO. I want a reward. I mean, it goes on, and I'll talk about one of those in just a minute, but it's crazy how easy Hoover was like, oh yeah, thanks for your email, or thanks for your email. Thanks for your mail. I really appreciated your letter. I mean, he was very accessible. I'll give him credit for that. When he, say what you want about that cross-dressing freak, he seemed to be very accessible to people about UFO documents. Let me see. Why did I flag this one? Oh, this was another one that talks way later in the files about that same Puget Sound investigation. But again, nothing new, nothing informative, nothing about those missing documents. Let me go skip ahead. I think there's one. Yeah, here's one from Hoover. Right here. It says, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Communications Section, transmit the following message to Rordal, August 12. It is noted from interrogation of Emil Smith, so that same captain, E.J. Smith. Smith claims that during the conference on July 31, that Dahl and Christian apparently repeated their false stories about the material being fragments of a flying disc. And only on Saturday night, August 2nd, did Dahl admit the story was a hoax. Now, again, this is coming from Hoover directly. If such is the case, it would appear either Smith or Arnold made the anonymous phone calls, since they would have been under the impression at that time the material furnished to Captain Davison and Lieutenant Brown was actually part of a flying disc. So he's saying, hey, those tips that the newspapers got that nobody should have known? He thinks those guys that found the UFO wreckage are now saying, oh, it's fake, and we're the ones that told the press about these guys' names. Yeah, it's weird. He said the officers probably would not have taken the alleged fragments with them on their fatal flight. This matter should be cleared up upon re-interview with Dahl and Chrisman. When this point clarified, no further investigation is necessary, though. So he's dropping it right then and there. Hoover is telling people to drop it. He's not dropping. He's telling people. And we're dropping this one. The Puget Sound UFO crash, it's done. It's over. Moving on. It's freaking weird, man. Like, it is very X-Files cover-up. I'm going to tell you to drop it, and you're going to drop it. Let's see. Let me skip ahead a little bit more. I got to start really jumping around. I'm already at 1 hour and 30 minutes. There's one, August 30th, 1947, about photos and negatives about UFOs, and then nothing. Here's a bunch of photos of UFOs, or of flying discs, and then absolutely nothing. This next one, I'm definitely including this next one. Hold on, I want to make sure I got this. Oh, crap. Hold on 1 second. I want to make sure I'm pulling up this one correctly. This next one really hit home for me. It was really bizarre to read because it's about possible UFO materials. Yeah, here we go. At Dow Chemicals in Midland, Michigan. here's the deal. Here's why this hits home, not just because it's Michigan. My grandpa worked at Dow Chemicals at this time. It's insane to me. Like, while my grandpa was working at Dow Chemical in Midland, Michigan, a very small place, I'm sure he knew these people. I wish my grandpa was still alive. I would have asked if he remembered Raymond Edward Lane or Mrs. Laura Lane. These two people, Raymond Edward Lane and Mrs. Laura Lane, info received from Dow Chemical Company, Midland, Michigan, that on July 10th last, Raymond Edward Lane, an employee of Dow and subsidiary since about 1922, brought some materials to their physics laboratory, stating that about 5:15 p.m. July 9th last, he and his wife Laura were walking in a field owned by Dow, and about 100 feet away, he heard a puff noise, turned and saw a ball of white about the size of a bushel basket burning about a foot off the ground. Okay, that's weird. The fire died out immediately, and Lane later scooped up a 3-inch area of fused sand into a can. So, have you ever tried to, like, make a campfire out in the woods? It doesn't fuse sand under it. You know how hot you've got to be? That's like a nuclear explosion hot to fuse sand under it. This guy turns, here's a puff noise, turns around, sees a ball of white about the size of a bushel basket, burning a foot off the ground, and it fused the sand under it. So this guy's smart enough, working at Dow, scoops it up into a can and took it to the physics lab. They both talked about it. His wife was very reluctant to talk about it to the government. Interesting. So she got scared. Dow authorities considered the story fantastic, but have examined the material and state contents to be ordinary sand, not radioactive, but fused together, giving off ammonia gas, a small silver nugget, almost pure except for sand fused into it, not radioactive, was melted in the center, giving off the ammonia odor, and little droplets of silver melted in sand and some other grayish color in material, which is radioactive. Level of radioactivity extremely low. An employee formerly employed by government at Los Alamos project stated fused sand has some characteristics of Los Alamos sand, where they did the nuke tests in Los Alamos in the 40s. This sand had the same elements or characteristics as Los Alamos sand. They then went on to say, like, hey, this guy is big into UFOs. He was known to have in his possession small quantities of luminous paint, radioactive. He is also known to be an amateur photographer, to have limited knowledge of chemistry and physics from employment at Dow. Lane is described as very peculiar, surly, antagonistic to plant protection officers, interested in photography and electricity. And they go into, like, serious detail about how he looks and what he is. They then interviewed his wife again, trying to get her to say that the story is a prank. And she said, no, it's not a prank, but she didn't want to talk about it. Very reluctant to discuss the matter. Neither he or his wife were able to locate the exact location where the material was found in the field. It was then sent to the Army Intelligence Office at Selfridge Air Force Base in Michigan. I've been there many a times. Material was then forwarded to the FBI laboratory for examination. It's crazy to me to think that, again, while my grandpa was working there, the government was investigating possible UFO materials or some strange paranormal materials that were there. It's crazy to me, man. That one, like, I would love, like I said, I wish my grandpa was alive. I would love to talk about that one with him to find out what's going on. This next one, I have no idea what's going on with this next one. Oh my God, why is everybody texting me all of a sudden? Hold on. Let me turn off I don't know if you guys can hear the dinging, but it's driving me crazy. All right, I have no idea what's going on with this next one. Looking online, no one else seems to know either. It's one that a lot of people are talking about online. And it's a code that was put into a newspaper. It was like someone did like a personal ad in a newspaper, and it was a code. Well, this woman read it, had nothing better to do, like the Sudoku of her time, and so she deciphered the code and sent it to the FBI, to Hoover. And it says, tired of these are like obviously decoded. It was just DITERFONUHMASOESNES, like weird things. So she decoded it to say, tired of human nonsense, won't await atomic war disrupting order, solar system, so sent flying discs and will set up world order under Martians later this year. Yeah. So this newspaper ad said, county irritant from our mailbox, calling for decoders. Belmore, about 9 at night on July 4th, I received the following shortwave messaging code. Origin unknown. I kept listening, and about an hour later, the message was repeated letter for letter. I can't figure it out what it means, but here it is. And there's the code. So she sent it to Hoover, who reported back. Dear Mrs. Sarbanes, I wish to acknowledge the receipt of your letter and a closure dated July 10th, 1947. I have instructed the special agent in charge of our New York office to have a special agent call upon you for the purpose of attaining further information in connection with this matter. Your interest in calling this information my attention is indeed appreciated. Sincerely yours, John Edgar Hoover. Again, way too accessible for the director of the FBI to be like, yeah, thanks for your letter. Really appreciate it. Let's see. Page 44. Oh, that was the J. Edgar Hoover. Yes, I did that. It gets mentioned later on, like 100 pages later on in this file. It says, regarding Mrs. Sarbanes, informant, reference is made to the bureau dated July 21st, 1947, about her and her address. She lived in Long Island. She was interviewed by Special Agent William A. Johnson on August 12th, at which she advised that this coded message had appeared in Newsday, the local newspaper of Nassau and Suffolk County, Long Island. She stated that the message had appeared in the County Irritant, a feature of this paper, and had been signed Radio Ham. Mr. Jack Alstoll, who is the city editor of Newsday, was interviewed and advised his article had been sent to the newspaper by letter, which is signed Radio Ham, and explained that he had no way of determining the identity of the writer. So he's already scared. Mr. Ashtoll stated that it was his opinion that the code had been made up by some local, quote, screwball who had been affected by all of the newspaper publicity given at the last time the story of flying discs. Here's the enclosed article. Thank you, sir. Yeah, and then there's the article again. There's more back and forth from people trying to figure out who this guy is, why he did this, where it was transmitted from. Did we transmit it? They're trying to say, no, we don't think we transmitted it. We're not sure who transmitted it. Yeah, and I looked it up online. No one knows. It is an oddball thing that was just put in the Newsday paper from some person's personal ad. And obviously it's kind of like, drink your Ovaltine kind of a code, but still very weird. Alrighty, I'm going to start slowly wrapping this up. Let's get to this page. This page I'm going to go over very quickly. It's basically about facts relative to flying saucers. And could it be possibly Soviet espionage? And they were saying, no, it's not Soviet espionage. And then they were saying, all right, if it's not the Soviets, then who? And our government saying, we don't know who. It's just internal memorandum from the United States government trying to figure out who the hell are who's flying these flying saucers? And no one's seeming to know. All righty, let me skip ahead. That's essentially all that one said. Let me skip ahead to this page. Come on, load up. There we go. This one's to the director of the FBI, so Hoover again. Talking about a crap ton of UFOs, again, flying discs, in the formation of a triangle. They're always in the formation of triangle in 1947, which is odd because that would be a formation that we would use for multiple aircrafts right after the war. there's all these like World War II planes. Not all these. There's like a handful of these World War II planes that fly out of Van Nuys Airport, right back where I used to live. Horribly. But these planes are cool. They fly overhead, and they're World War II planes, and they're flying in a V formation. They fly them on like Easter and Memorial Day and all those kind of things. And they just fly around to, be seen. And it's really cool to hear how loud just like 3 or 5 of these planes are. And these people are seeing 9, and they're not hearing anything in 1947. I can tell you right now, these World War II planes are so flippin' loud. There is no possible way that they were experimental planes. They noted that they're in triangle formation. 20 to 25 minutes later, another group was seen, and then another group of UFOs were seen in these flying discs were seen in this, flying V formation. Page 70. Let's see what this page 70 is. Oh yeah, here's another one. From J. Edgar Hoover to Mrs. W.T. Williams. Dear Mrs. Williams, your letter on August 8th, 1947 has been received. I am most appreciative of the thoughtfulness which prompted you to communicate with me. For your information, no reward has been offered by any U.S. government agency for the location of flying saucers. I regret that I am unable to be assistance in this instance. Yeah, so J. Edgar Hoover basically wrote back to this woman, and I'll tell you her story in a second. She wrote this very long, very, very long letter to J. Edgar Hoover saying, hey, this UFO crashed in my front yard. I took some of these big pieces. I'm a tiny little old lady. I took some of these big pieces to the local police station. I came back the next day. We were looking through and found even more pieces. So I dragged those over to the local police. The police officer said he was going to send that to the FBI. I haven't heard anything, but I did hear from some local town peoples that, there's a reward for flying saucers. And she was like, hey, where's my money, man? And basically, if there is a reward, Mr. Hoover, you are the one. Oh, I know you are the one to see that I get it. Will you please help me? Yours truly, Mrs. W.T. Williams, 4176 Stevenson Street, Florence, Alabama. So I looked her up. Couldn't find out crap about her. I mean, obviously, she's long since dead. But anyone who's into UFOs, I implore you to get the permission of the landowner and go to that address, because I am betting there is still some pieces of whatever the hell it was that she found that took to the police, who then went, oh crap, we've got to give this to the FBI. She talks about like numerous pieces. It exploded. It basically slammed into the ground and exploded into pieces. She said it was a flying saucer, fell in my front yard at a distance of something 5 or 6 feet from where I was standing. I saw it come straight down out of the sky, came down at a terrible speed, and exploded. I turned the pieces over to the chief, Noah Danley, of something of the police off basic. Mr. Hoover, I don't know what the police did with that, whatever we might call it, that fell in my yard from the sky. You probably know all about it, but I did what I thought was right. I called the police at once and turned it over to them. Then in 3 or 4 days later, a neighbor and I found more of it in the tall grass, turned that over to the police. I carried it over to the police station. So I'm telling you right now, wherever 417-6 Stevenson Street, Florence, Alabama, if that's still public land, if they haven't built like an apartment complex on top of it, get the permission of the landowner. I'm betting any money there are still some pieces there, because I can't find out anything else about the government going there and looking for wreckage. There's nothing in these files, nothing I could find online. There's nothing about where those pieces that she gave the police went. It's weird. This was an odd one. And again, be on the forefront of this. I honestly think that if you were to look for UFO wreckage, that is a good place, again, with the permission of the landowner. If they haven't, built a parking lot over it or a ginormous building over it. I couldn't find anything about, here, let me look again. Come on, go over to this tab. There we go. 417-6 Stevenson Street, Florence, Alabama. Did you mean 417? Sure, yeah. Oh, man, it looks like it's a place, looks like it's a tire shop, Stevenson Tire Pros. So it might be all just completely, come on, load up. It might be, it is. It's all parking lot, basically. There's a Stevenson Tire Pros, there's an EV Connect, there's a Bentley Chevrolet. Man, it really looks like it's all been paved over, which again might be a good thing. They might have just paved over the ground without, digging it up much and going through it. So somewhere in the future, there could be a UFO or UFO parts found underneath a Stevenson Tire Pro in Alabama, in Florence, Alabama. That's weird. I hope that's the case. But again, I thought it was very, very, very cool how accessible J. Edgar Hoover was. Now, obviously, I don't trust him to save my life, but he seemed very, open and in the forefront of like, yeah, come to me, man. Oh, I thank you. I appreciate your letter. Very quick about like, let me write you back and say thank you. Which also brings up, where the hell are these J. Edgar Hoover letters? Are you telling me that someone's grandma that wrote to J. Edgar Hoover and got a letter back to him about UFOs, they didn't keep that letter? Those letters aren't still out there somewhere? Someone must have letters from dead relatives that were sent to them by J. Edgar Hoover about UFOs. Why aren't those popping up on eBay and auction sites? That's cool as hell, man. I really hope people weren't like, I don't know, and just threw all this crap out. Another thing, I'm going to start wrapping this up. Another thing I will say that I noticed, it was crazy how many people changed their story after being asked to by the FBI. It was literally more than the FBI saying, look, I know you went to the press and talked about flying discs. If the press asks you again, you're now to say, oh, I misremembered, or I can't recall what I saw, or I didn't see what I said I saw. And they just did it. People are like, yep, you got it. I'll tell the press right now that's not the way it was. Like, it was instant. Change your story. And it could be a little bit of the whole, like, Men in Black. They weren't just asked nicely to change their story. They were told, you will change your story, or we're going to take care of you, or you're going to get, you're going to disappear or whatever. But it does seem very quickly it doesn't seem. It is very obvious how quickly people just instantly change their story in these records. Also, how many crazy people there were in 1947 that just immediately went like, flying saucers? Got to write to J. Edgar Hoover right now. And were very obviously mentally disturbed and obviously wasting J. Edgar Hoover and the government's time. The other big thing that I noticed in these files, from the files that I've read, how many people looked up, saw a balloon, an obvious balloon, and went, hello, police, I'm looking at a balloon right now. It's flying by. And the police were like, yeah, okay, all right, thanks. No, you don't understand. There's a balloon. It's flying by. I'm looking at it. It's a balloon. I know what a balloon looks like, and I'm looking at a balloon. You need to report this to the government. And the police are like, why? It's a balloon. You just said it's a balloon. It's bizarre. And there's many more pages. But again, I'm almost at 2 hours. So I'm going to call it here. I read some of the stories in the 60s files. Again, I wanted to focus on the 40s files, but I did read some of the 60s files. I read some of the 90s files, some of the brand new 20s files. So again, this is just a taste. I'll go back into these files quite a bit. I'm going to pick out more famous cases, unknown cases, just cool cases in the future. My hope is that we get some serious stuff, though, that has never been reported or never been released before. And we get to actually, for the first time, hear an incredible UFO story from both sides, from the eyewitness and from the government. And finally, we get some really cool new UFO mind-blowing, they're 100% real stuff. But just again, reading what I just read to you, it's obvious they're real. It's obvious that the government knows they're real. And it's good to be back. I have a ton more stuff planned in June. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. This has been a fun one. I hope you guys liked it. Thank you so much for being patient with me being gone. I'm your host, Kurt Sammy. This has been another edition of Paranormal Almanac. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Can't wait to be done moving. Oceanic.